Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here, and it is about noon on, it's 12:02. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late here getting started. Today is Friday, December 22nd, and I am coming to you from West Virginia, from our lodge here in southern West Virginia, and this will be my last CBN Live before Christmas, and we'll probably do one more, maybe update the week between Christmas and New Year's. I usually take that week off completely because I am I'm a very big proponent of goal setting and measuring what I do every year, how things go. And the week between Christmas and New Year's is when I always just take an entire week. I back up everything. I weed out all the chaff. I go through, your life builds up a lot of plaque in over the course of the year. We've got little subscriptions to stuff all over the place that just build up. So we go through and just sort of clean everything out and like I say, back up all the computers, all the phones, photographs, you name it, and then just kind of do some kind of thinking about how the year went, what went right, what went wrong, how we would like next year to go. If we want to improve, I think you have to measure how you're doing, and then that'll enable you to set goals for the coming year. So I'll do usually that week between Christmas and New Year's. That's what I'm busy with, and just sort of getting everything ready so we can launch into 2024 and have a great year. But I will go ahead and do a live during that week, just an update, especially if anything happens that's significant in the war in Israel. You can bet I will be online and we will talk about it. And so I wanted to give a couple of updates today about what's going on right now in the war. If you just sort of scan through what's happening, the IDF is definitely in serious combat in Gaza still. Again, we have to be careful not to let this get too sort of normalized. I think we have to understand, we have to remind ourselves why Israel finds itself in this position. It's easy to forget the horrors of October 7th, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today specifically. And it is easy to start to forget that there are troops in the field that we need to be praying for, who are putting their lives on the line and in many cases giving the ultimate sacrifice. And so it's important to, let's see here, I want to fix that camera. I'll take that portrait mode off. I don't like it when it artificially fuzzes out the background. So I think it's important for us to spend time reminding ourselves about that so that we don't forget why the world is in this position. And as I mentioned yesterday, I think that we are edging closer to a on-the-ground incursion by the IDF into Lebanon. Now, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. It may not happen, but I think that just from watching what's going on the ground, the way that the IDF is striking inside Lebanon, and they're not just striking the sites that are firing at them. Okay, that'd be one thing. There are several, if not a dozen or more, attacks from southern Lebanon into Israel every day. That's the only rockets we've seen so far today. I've been watching here, and what you see is it says confrontation line, confrontation line, confrontation line. The confrontation line is up in the north. The line of confrontation is the northern border with Lebanon. And There have not been any rockets so far today out of Gaza after the massive numbers that flew out of there yesterday. That's a real good sign. It would be great if we didn't see any more out of Gaza. But Israel is not just striking back at the places that fire at them in Lebanon. They are striking all kinds of places across Lebanon along that northern border up there. And they are, that to me says that they are setting up for a possible ground invasion of the north to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River. That is the place where Hezbollah promised to stay behind. They stay north of the Litani River back in the last war that they had with Israel. And part of the ceasefire agreement, they've never adhered to that. One of the things that you can notice is people keep calling for a ceasefire. People keep calling for them to come up with a truce with Hamas or Hezbollah. If there's one thing we know for sure, it's that Hamas and Hezbollah never, ever abide by the terms of any agreement that they make with Israel. They make those agreements to try to get Israel to abide by terms, but they never consider themselves beholden to those terms. So let's look here at a couple of things. If we look down in the south in Gaza, again, Israel has a long way to go. The light blue areas, and then down in the south in Khan Yunis, those kind of light green areas are the places where Israel is so far. They have let the people in the southern part of northern Gaza, they told them near Deir al-Balah. If you look right there in the center of that map, you see Deir al-Balah. The IDF has announced to anyone who is in Deir al-Balah that they need to start moving further south, that the IDF is going to push into that area in the coming days and continue on their fight south. So that doesn't mean the people are going to do it. You know, there have been many, many times where they have called on people to leave and they haven't left, but they're at least giving them the opportunity to leave if they are so inclined. Okay, so let's get into what I want to talk about here, which is some charts that we can look at to kind of visualize just how bad the attack into Israel on October 7th really was. These come from the Center for Strategic and Information Studies. It's a think tank in Washington, D.C., and they've done a good job putting these together. If we look at the 9 deadliest terror attacks by number of fatalities going back to 1970, the number 1 attack by number of fatalities in the attack is the 9/11 attacks on the United States back in 2001. Number 2 is an attack that many people might not know about, and that took place in Tikrit in Iraq, 2014. But what happened was they called it the Camp Speicher Massacre. And the Camp Speicher Massacre happened June 12, 2014, when ISIS, okay, so remember the United States left Iraq in 2011. But in 2014, the ISIS, Islamic State, swept into Iraq and took over all the way to within about 4 kilometers of the airport in Baghdad. So all of northern Iraq in a lightning series of raids. The Iraqi soldiers crumbled under their assault. There were, it was actually amazing because I was there. I was in Baghdad when this happened. And people were starting to pack up and get ready to flee Baghdad because ISIS was only 2 miles outside of town. And when they got to Tikrit, which is in the northern part of, well, it's kind of north-central Iraq. Tikrit being the birthplace of Saddam Hussein, I think, or else it was where he had some palaces and stuff. I think it was his hometown, was Tikrit. Anyway, Camp Spiker was a cadet, a place where they had a bunch of military cadets. The military academy for the Iraqi army was there. And ISIS came in and massacred something like between 1,100 and 1,700 Iraqi cadets in one day. They just machine gunned these people. And I remember the video coming out of that. It was absolutely horrific. And ISIS took a bunch of people as hostages as well. So that was the number 2. If we look back here back to the chart again, number 3 is the October 7th attacks in Israel. So again, the 3rd deadliest terror attack in modern history since 1970 was that attack into Israel, October 7th. Now, however, if we look at the fatalities per capita, now we get to see why this is such a big deal with for Israel. It has been, with 1,200 people killed, the attacks per capita, 1.19 per capita. The Tikrit attack is not even half of that. And the 9/11 attack isn't even on the list. It's not even there at all. It's nowhere to be seen on that list. So you can tell why this was such a big deal. They say that if this attack, if they were to do a per capita attack like this in the United States, they would have to have killed more than 50,000 Americans on one day. And let's hope that we never see anything like that. But really what this was essentially just a massive mass shooting attack, kind of like the mass shootings that we've seen across the United States, except there were 1,500 to 2,000 shooters. So imagine the possibilities of that. You know, there were 18 hijackers or 19 hijackers on 9/11. If those 19 guys had all taken an AK, spread out around the United States, and just started machine gunning people, they wouldn't have killed anywhere near as many people as they did by crashing planes into buildings. But if you had, you know, mass shooting in the United States with, let's say, 2,000 terrorists who all got into the United States, came in across the southern border illegally, acquired a weapon, got a bunch of ammunition, and then spread out to towns all across the country with the idea that at the same moment, on the same day, they would all unleash a mass shooting attack. And you can imagine the kind of chaos that would cause across the country. They could very likely kill thousands of people, but even that would not anywhere near approach the per capita death rate that we saw in Israel. This is why in Israel, virtually every person in Israel knows somebody who was directly affected by the attack on October 7th, whether that is they knew somebody who was killed, they knew somebody who was taken hostage, they knew somebody who was driven out of their homes, et cetera, et cetera. So virtually everybody, yeah, it's almost like Hervoy, I can't even pronounce that name, says it would be like dropping a nuke in the United States. That's correct. They would have to drop a nuclear bomb in the U.S. most likely to have that kind of damage. So, you know, this kind of puts in perspective why it was such a big deal. All right, now let's look at this next graph, the 5 deadliest terror attacks in Israeli history. And you can see that there's not even any comparison. There's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. The next deadliest massacre was the Coastal Road Massacre of 1978. If we look that up, Coastal Road Massacre of 1978, according to Wikipedia, happened on 11 March when Palestinian militants hijacked a bus on the coastal highway of Israel and murdered everybody in the bus, 38 people, including 13 children, and 76 more were wounded. This was carried out by Fatah, a Palestinian nationalist party that turned into the Palestinian Authority. And the Palestinian Authority is more zealous, more dangerous than Fatah was, and Hamas is much more militant than the Palestinian Authority. So they keep getting worse. I've been listening to a book about Israeli special operations over the last few days, and one of the things I've noticed is that in almost every case, the enemy that they have to fight when it comes to anything internal is Palestinians. The Palestinians have been a thorn in the side of the Israelis since day one. And so that gives you a sense for how big the goal is. Jason, didn't you ask that yesterday? Could they still flood tunnels after a ceasefire? Somebody asked that yesterday, and I answered it that no, they could not. A ceasefire, they would agree to stop all operations and just hold fast. Okay, looking at this, these attacks, it gives you a sense of what a big goal they have set for themselves this time, to absolutely wipe out Hamas and to dismantle their ability to make war, when Hamas is just the latest iteration of the Palestinian threat against Israel that goes all the way back to 1947. So this is a very, very big goal. And it's one of the reasons why, I've had people ask, why are the Israelis destroying so much in Gaza? Isn't that just likely to create more hatred? And I keep saying, you could not create more hatred from the Palestinians toward the Israelis. The Palestinians hate the Israelis so badly, you're not going to make them hate you anymore. There's nothing you could do that could make them hate you more. You could, and probably are, inflaming others around the world that are, Islamic jihadists, to actually take action. They're not going to hate you any more than they already do, but they might have been persuaded that this is not the time to take action, like when Donald Trump was president. But the reaction to the October 7th attacks by Israel, along with a feckless and weak foreign policy by the United States, certainly is going to encourage more terror attacks around the world by Islamic jihadists. No question. Will the rebuilding of Gaza be similar to the rebuilding of Raqqa or Mosul, or much different? No, Eddie, I think it'll be much different. I've been to Raqqa lately, and so Raqqa is really not being rebuilt. I mean, it's just very, very slowly coming back, and there's not a lot of international aid going into Raqqa to rebuild that city. And so even years after, like what they retook Raqqa in 2019, I guess, and or 18 maybe, and it's still completely wrecked. I mean, it's still just rubble. Much of the city is rubble, at least last time I was there. Some things are improving. There are some things slowly coming back, but there's not much happening. When it comes to rebuilding Gaza, I would estimate, I'd venture to say that the international community is going to spend billions of dollars to pump money into Gaza to rebuild it. Your tax dollars and mine will most likely go to rebuild Gaza, and that It's going to take a lot of money. Now, whether or not they actually use that money for rebuilding is another question. It depends on who they have in charge at that point. And since the Israelis have said that they are not going to just leave it to the Palestinians, they're going to stay in there. They may not actually govern Gaza, but they are not going to leave Gaza alone. That might mean that it gets rebuilt more quickly, but I don't know. Was it the IDF that shot the 2 women from the church? I think they are still they're still investigating that, Dawn. I'm not positive that they have ascertained whether or not it was the IDF that shot them or not. Do you know what they do with the money they find in the tunnels? Well, Mary, I doubt they blow it up. I doubt they burn it. It probably goes to the Israeli treasury. And, you know, just in this grand scheme of things, they're finding a few $1 million in cash. And it sounds like a lot, but in the scheme of what they're spending on this war, it's really not much at all. I know that during the war during the battle that we had in Panama back in 1989, we found a couple $1 million cash, and that went to the State Department and just, you know, got put into the Treasury, I think, here in the United States. I believe so, anyway. When is Doron going to be on again? Love that video. Thank you, Kenny. Doron Kedar is, at the moment, I believe, back inside Gaza, and he's on missions and can't speak, but I do keep up with him, and we will get him back on again when we can, for sure. I do have a couple people scheduled to be on. We were supposed to have a great interview yesterday, but I wasn't able to get to it on time, and so we had to put it off. But we are, over the next, I think we'll have one Monday after Christmas. I've got a good interview coming, so we'll see. All right, let's go to that last chart here. And this is one that I think is important to keep in mind. This is the death rate of Palestinians based on previous conflicts. And what we see here is that this is by far the deadliest conflict that the Palestinians have ever seen. And it's all their fault. Now, as I've mentioned before, we got to be careful about the numbers that are being reported out of Gaza, because nobody really knows how many people are being killed in Gaza, and the Gaza Health Ministry is just sort of making up numbers every day. I think that's pretty well established. But whatever the numbers are, you can be very sure that they are absolutely the highest numbers that have ever been seen of deaths of Palestinians in a conflict with Israel. The next closest is Operation Protective Edge, which took place in 2014. So that was the Gaza War. 2014, also known as Operation Strong Cliff, or the Battle of the Withered Grain. It was a military operation launched by Israel on July 8th, 2014 in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Authority has been governed by Hamas since 2007, but following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers in the West Bank by Hamas-affiliated militants, the IDF pushed into the West Bank, and Hamas then fired a bunch of rockets into Israel, which triggered a 7-week-long conflict inside Gaza. Well, we know for sure that this conflict is going to be much longer than 7 weeks, without a doubt. And it already has been longer than 7 weeks. And so the death toll is going to be much, much higher inside Gaza. And again, that's all the fault of Hamas. That's all the fault of Hamas. You cannot blame Israel for this, because they didn't start it. They're just trying to finish it. And I remember my dad, when I was a kid, telling me, I don't want you to go out and pick on people, but if somebody ever starts a fight with you, you better be the one who finishes it. And that's what Israel's doing. Derek is asking, is Russia helping Hamas? I would say yes, they are. Maybe not militarily, maybe not directly with weapons or something like that, but they certainly want this conflict to continue because it's very good for Russia if the world's attention is divided between Ukraine and Israel. Most people have just forgotten about Ukraine at this point. And their aid is drying up over there. A lot of that aid is being redirected to Israel. And so Russia is employing its army of hackers and propagandists to try to paint the IDF and the United States in a negative light in this conflict with Hamas. This ridiculous idea that the IDF is using neutron bombs inside Gaza that's being pushed by some commentators here in the United States. That comes directly from the Russian propaganda machine. I wanted to talk more about that today. The Russian propaganda machine, through some of its sort of proxy websites, like Natural News is one of them, that's been used. We know that it's been used by the Russians to disseminate misinformation on Ukraine, and now it's being used to disseminate news items about Israel. A neutron bomb is an enhanced radiation weapon, which is a thermonuclear device. It's a low yield one, but it's still a nuclear bomb. And, you know, when you look at what that would do if Israel or anybody, the United States, anybody, used a nuclear bomb in war, what that does is it opens Pandora's box, and lots of people will start using nuclear weapons. The idea that the IDF even has a need to use a neutron bomb, to use a nuclear device in this war, whether it's tactical or not. First of all, just like in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, if they use a nuclear device, it not only denies that area to the enemy, but it denies it to the IDF. They can't go in there either without very specialized equipment, because it makes it hot. It makes it, you know, even though it's a low yield device, it still makes it radioactive in there. Number two, it would kill all kinds of civilians. And they're specifically going out of their way, putting themselves at greater risk to keep from, you know, hurting civilians. So the idea that the IDF would use a neutron bomb is patently ridiculous on its face, but Russia is spreading misinformation like that in order to make in order to harm the IDF and through them the United States. Yeah, it sounds more like something Putin or Kim Jong-un would use. But again, Putin can't use it. Kim Jong-un can't use it. Remember this, a nuclear weapon only functions as a deterrent device or an end-of-the-world device. If Russia uses a nuclear weapon of any kind in Ukraine, they have already been alerted that all bets are off and that every nation that in NATO will retaliate against Russia. So if Vladimir Putin pushes that button, he's pushing a button to destroy his own country, and he knows it. So he's not going to use a nuclear bomb. Is Israel still flooding tunnels? As far as I know, they are. I have not heard that that has stopped. Israel is decisively losing the information war. How do we combat this? I think it's hard for us to combat this, Joe, until Israel decides to do a better job combating it. And I've been shouting that from the rooftops at the IDF and at the General Press Office in Israel since the beginning. They are terrible about fighting the information war. They're terrible about it. And you know why? Because they don't trust the truth. You don't have to trust, they will say, well, we don't trust the journalists to tell the truth. And what I keep saying is that you don't have to trust the journalists. If your cause is righteous and you are doing your best to keep your troops doing the right thing, you don't have to worry about the truth getting out. The truth will prevail. If you let enough people in, even if there are some people who sandbag you, who try to, twist it to make you look bad, there will be enough people who tell the truth that the truth will get out and you don't have to worry about it. But they are so tight-fisted with allowing access to what's happening in Gaza that it makes them look bad. And they're putting out daily updates, daily videos as much as they can, and they think that that will help them win the war. It won't. Because if those videos are coming from one of the two belligerent parties, then it's immediately suspect. But if it was coming from me or from any other third party, then it's not suspect. And Israel just can't quite figure that out. They don't get that. Why doesn't Israel take back all the land God gave them? Well, you have to take that up with them, I suppose. Do you believe in two-state solution? I don't. Because one of the two states, that is the Palestinians, doesn't want a two-state solution and won't agree to it. They believe that, that the Quran states that any land that has ever been controlled by Muslims must forever be Muslim land. And so they won't, they won't agree to a two-state solution. And they haven't in the many times that it's been offered to them. Do you foresee Hezbollah carrying out an attack at least as bad, in turn which would initiate a much more comprehensive Israeli response? Well, in the foreseeable future, I don't see that happening by Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is trying to legitimize itself by becoming a political party, and more of a political party, less of a military party. And they have a seat in the government now. So there are two reasons why they most likely won't escalate this war. Hezbollah won't. Number one, they will lose legitimacy as a political power if they do. And number two, the economy of Lebanon cannot support a war right now. It just can't. And because of that, it would collapse their economy if they really went to war with Israel. And so they're probably not going to do it. Now, 5 or 10 years from now, anybody's game. Who knows? But right now, Matt, I don't see it. They are going to continue doing harassing attacks on Israel. They're trying to tread right up to the line where they can, try to blow up things in Israel without getting an actual invasion of their own country and going to full-scale warfare. Israel may not give them that option, because Israel is tired of living this way. And the people that live in that zone along the northern border up there have said, we're not going back home until we can do so safely. And the government knows that. And so they may have to go into Lebanon. And they perceive, the Israelis perceive that Hezbollah and that the Lebanese army are weak right now. And so they figure, while we're called up for war, this may be the time to do it. We'll see. We'll see whether that happens. Islam would love to take back Spain as well. That's true. And any place else where they've ever been. That's why, it's such a big deal that, for example, like the UK is now getting completely taken over by Muslims, because they are going to call that Muslim territory, and they will now consider it theirs, and they'll never give it up. All right, so that's all I've got for today's update. should probably mention what's going on in the Red Sea. I was just looking here, and what it looks like is that a report of a cargo ship hijacking near Somalia. Officials in the West, Israel, and other countries in the Middle East confirm reports about an intelligence ship of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps stationed in the southern Red Sea that is providing the Houthis with real-time intelligence on the movement and identity of vessels moving in the area and actively helps them carry out attacks. If that is the case, that could very likely be a catalyst that would set off a wider war with the Houthis, and that could be really, really bad. Not that the Western, world, the U.S., the U.K., and all the other countries that have ships over there could not take out the Houthis, but as I said yesterday, what do you bomb? Yemen is a giant dirt parking lot. There's not a lot of infrastructure even to take out. And they are pretty much used to living in the, if we say, we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age, Yemenis are already living in the Stone Age. And so they wouldn't notice if you did that. So we could take out as much military hardware as we possibly could, but, I'm not sure that it would be more than just a exercise in futility if we tried to. What are we going to do? Take over Yemen? Nobody wants Yemen. The Yemenis don't want Yemen. Why do they always have big fights in places that nobody wants? Why don't they ever have a war in Aruba or someplace nice? I don't know. But as a war correspondent, I kind of wish they would. Ukraine and Israel have been the two places that were the nicest places where they've had a war in my career. And I'm very grateful. I mean, I'm not, it's terrible what's happening to both those places, but as a war correspondent, it's much more comfortable to report in a place where there's actual infrastructure, where it's a first world country. And so for once, they're doing that. I'm just being facetious, folks. Just don't get your undies in a wad over that. Why is Golani Brigade being pulled out from military engagement? They are rotating units out and rotating other units in. I don't know if that's the case here with the Golani Brigade. Obviously, the IDF is not going to share that kind of information, but I can make an assumption that they are rotating units out that have been engaged since the beginning. 5 or 6 weeks in combat, that's enough to get burned out for sure. When you're in combat like that, you're sleeping in the dirt, you're under constant stress, and you're watching your buddies get killed and injured, and you're going to need some time to off-gas. And they've got enough troops to do it, to swap those guys out. And so they have been, and fortunately for Israel, in one sense, the war is right next door to home, and it's a very small country, and so they can let their guys have some time off and go home and visit their relatives and families and stuff, and it dramatically improves their performance to allow them to do that. Ukraine is a very nice country. It's very flat in most of Ukraine, but it's still a nice country. Okay. Yeah, the Hamas is going to claim a victory out of anything. Why don't you send in English? What? Thank you for praying. Let's go ahead and pray, and we'll get out of here. I'm going to be live in about 20 minutes on my own channel. So if you would, go subscribe to The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube. And I'm doing a special edition of my podcast on the 5 most memorable moments of a U.S. Army Ranger. My 5 most memorable moments in the Ranger Regiment. I think I've got some pictures up there of my time in the Ranger Regiment. I'm going to be talking and showing pictures from my time in the Rangers a long time ago, and talk about what it's like to be a member of one of the most elite units in the U.S. military. And so I'm going to be doing a live on that here at the top of the hour. And so you can go and watch that if you like. I'd love to have you all over there. So consider this my personal invitation. Also, if you want to follow all of my reporting and my documentaries, my books, all that stuff, you can go to chuckholton.com or go to chuckholton.locals.com. Both of those are the same webpage. And you can subscribe over there. People who, you can subscribe without paying anything, but you can also support me there. And supporters get access to, I just put up yesterday my documentary about the shipwreck of Paul from Acts 27-28. I did a documentary about a team that found the anchors, the actual anchors from Paul's shipwreck out of the book of Acts. And it's an absolutely fascinating adventure. So I put up free access to that for people who are subscribers on the site. If you go to chuckholton.com, that you can go watch right now. So thank you very much for watching. Let's say a prayer and we'll get out of here. Lord, thank you so much for the holiday season. And I pray that everybody would have time to just rest and relax and recover and spend time with family. We pray also for reconciliation for those that have broken relationships. This is the time of year to forgive one another and to go and ask forgiveness of those that we have broken relationships with and mend those relationships. I pray that people that are listening to me who are in a situation like that would have the courage to have those hard conversations and let go of the anger that they have toward people who have hurt them, and would forgive them and would be freed from the poison of toxic relationships over the holiday season, Lord. Father, I pray for what's happening in Israel. I pray that there would not be an invasion on the northern border, that Hezbollah would decide that discretion is a better part of valor and they would back off, and that people who are currently living in hotel rooms would be able to return home to their actual homes on the northern border and the southern border, Lord. We pray for those IDF soldiers who are getting rotated out, that they would have time to rest and recover, that you would protect their minds from the trauma that they've experienced, and that the IDF would be able to quickly push through southern Gaza and would be able to finish this fight and get it over with, Lord. I pray that the Hamas fighters would give themselves up. They would see dreams and visions of what awaits them in hell if they do not, and they would cry out to you, Father, and they also would be saved. And we know that you're working, we know that you're powerful, and that you can bring something good out of this tragedy, so we look forward to seeing that, Father. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name, amen. All right, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you all, and we'll see you after Christmas. I hope you have a very, very wonderful Christmas holiday. And like I said yesterday, even if you don't celebrate Christmas traditionally, what's stopping you? Christmas is about celebrating that forgiveness is magical. Forgiveness, and somebody gets mad at me for saying magical, there is a supernatural power in forgiveness, and the Christmas story and the story of the baby Jesus and what he came to do on this earth is what it's all about. And so you can talk to Jesus. You don't have to even be a believer. You can ask him for the power to forgive those who have wronged you and to be free from the anger and bitterness and hatred that will eat you up if you don't learn to forgive the people around you. And Jesus will give you that power. So may you all find a baby in the manger this year on Christmas. All right. God bless you. We'll see you next week after Christmas. Take care.